Beautiful. Beautiful. Hello, welcome to That Pedal Show. Dan here.
Mick here, hello. Stratty.
I'm very excited about this. I've been pestering you for ages to do this. Finally, it's happening.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what the title of the show is going to be. Something along the lines of, I don't know, get more from your vintage style Strat or something like that. But
yeah.
the point of it, Dan keeps bugging me about Strats and what to do with them, and actually bugging me is unfair. He asking very valid questions about, you know, how do you approach a Strat?
Exactly. I want to learn. Every time you come up with these little nuggets of Strat information, I'm like, I had no idea. You know, so I'm really keen to learn the little things that help a Strat sound monstrous.
What we're going to try and do is chunk this up into some common issues that people who are either new to Strats or slightly unfamiliar with Strats will probably come across. So if you know everything about Strats, this video is not for you. Secondly, we need to put some brackets around it. So one of the brackets is, I pretty much only play vintage style Strats.
Yep.
So we are going to touch a little bit on a humbucker in the bridge. We are going to touch a little bit on some other things that are non-vintage, but generally I only deal with vintage type Strats. So those are the brackets. Those are the things we're going to be talking about, the foibles of a vintage style Strat. Strat. And
so you're saying we're not going to be chiseling this out and putting a Floyd Rose in?
I think we'll do that off camera at the end. So it's not about, you know, well, it's not about the whole world of Strats. It's about the Strat world as I live in it.
Yeah.
Secondly, obviously, even then there are lots of variations on Strats. So for example, the big one that everyone talks about, rosewood fingerboard or maple neck. Now, again, I'm a predominantly rosewood board Strat player. It's just what I've gravitated towards. All the things we talk about today are relevant to maple neck Strats.
Yeah.
But the tonality is slightly different, and maybe that's the subject of another video at some point. But this is, you know, Strats in my world, which is generally slab board, sort of, let's say 59 to 65 spec Strats. That's
Could we be more specific, do you think?
I can be a lot more specific if you'd like that.
So when you say slab board, you mean it's not the round lamb, it's the straight, flat slab of rosewood.
Definitely don't want to do a Strat history lesson, but in late 62 they changed from a slab, so the top of the fingerboard, sorry, the top of the neck was flat, the bottom of the fingerboard was flat, and the board was stuck on the top,
right,
to a round lambing process where the top of the fingerboard was curved, radius, and so was the underside of the fingerboard, top of the neck, bottom of the fingerboard. Dan's Telly is a
round lamb.
Yeah, I really like the sound. They do sound different, but again, we're not going to get down that rabbit hole quite so much. But one thing we were mulling over, and you can discuss this, and I don't know if we've really fully thought it through, but most of the guitar heroes are Strat players.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
There's a lot of fantastic guitar players down the years who are heroes who don't play Strats.
Yes, of course.
Let's talk about Jimmy Page to begin with, and many others. But your virtuoso, like, stand up there and play a solo guitar players, are often Strat players.
Yeah. So why do you think that is?
I'm not sure. I've got no idea.
I've got a theory.
Go on.
The minute that I pick up a Strat, it's like, oh, this is comfortable. Don't get me wrong, I love my Telly, but it's like, okay, well, it hurts there. It hurts there.
Yeah.
It hurts there. Okay, but just crack on because it's awesome. I picked this up. It's like my hand is in a different position. It's really comfortable here. It's like, oh, I could play this all day.
Yeah.
So I think the ergonomics, I think, has got something to do with it.
I think it's got a lot to do with Jimi Hendrix.
Lovely to play.
I think it's got a lot to do with Jimi Hendrix.
Right. Okay.
Buddy Holly.
Yeah.
It's got a lot to do with Buddy Holly.
Buddy Holly, Hank Marvin. Yeah. So
wow.
it could be that. And let me just state for the record and categorically, I'm not saying that Wes Montgomery is not a guitar hero.
Of course.
He totally is. But if we think about, Simon brings up Buddy Holly, Hank Marvin, Hendrix, Clapton, David Gilmour, Stevie Ray,
Malmsteen, Eric Johnson.
Richie Blackmore,
Yeah, it's pretty phenomenal.
Eddie Van Halen.
Eddie Van Halen, yeah, because he was butchering his Strat.
Butchered, but
Yeah,
nevertheless.
yeah, wow.
Vi.
Yeah, right.
Green Meanie.
Green Meanie.
So, and
Super Strat.
have fun in the comments section about all the other guitar heroes who aren't Strat players. But there is something in that.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's just the flashy guy's guitar, maybe. Whereas, I read lots of people going, I just want a telly because it's simple and I'm working and I don't want all the flashy crap that goes with having a Strat and having to be like this guy.
Hi, I play a Strat.
Anyway, discuss that. Let's get into something more practical.
That's a really interesting point, though.
We've got a bunch of topics to cover.
Okay.
I've written a list for you, Dan.
I see the list.
What's interesting to you? I mean, we could go from the top if you want.
Okay.
What's your first question about Strats?
When I played Strats, they always sounded weedy. You know, to a point, but they always sounded. When I hear the Strat players that I love and hearing you, it sounds like a steam train.
Okay, let's do that then. Let's talk about the weediness of the Strat, because I think it's absolutely fair to say if you plug a Strat and a Telly and a Les Paul, let's talk about classic guitars,
Yep.
335, into the same amp with the same cable and a clean sound, the Strat is definitely the weediest sounding of the bunch.
Right.
It's this sound, isn't it? So I've got nothing switched on here. Amps are currently my two favourite amps to play, my 2-Rock classic reverb signature and a 50-watt Marshall Plexi going through a cab that's got two Celestian Ruby Alnicos in it, which roll off a tremendous amount of high end, which is kind of needed for that Marshall.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
works kind of nice.
Great.
We're also taking off a little bit with a Palmer attenuator, just so it's not quite so fire breathing. But they're set pretty clean, right? So here's the fabled position 2. Because of the nature of the amps, there's still a fair bit of mid-range there.
Yeah.
But if we go back onto this bridge pickup setting, we're nice and loud in here, so actually it is thin, but it doesn't sound...
That's not my sort of thin.
Doesn't sound plicky and...
No, that's the thing, because it used to sound plinky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it would, it is pretty plinky compared to what's going to come next. One of the things that I've always gravitated towards is gain pedals that add mid-range.
Okay.
So where you don't need all that extra mid-range push in a
Telecaster.
Telly.
Yeah, right.
And in a Les Paul and in a 335. Now, this isn't to say that you can't use tube screamers with those guitars, but I do think it's one of the reasons that a lot of Strat players gravitate in a tube screamery direction.
That's really interesting.
Is because the Strat not necessarily, doesn't have that sort of, doesn't have as much of that 500 to 800 hertz that a Les Paul or a Telly or a 335. Now, let it be said that those guitars don't all sound the same, but they certainly do have a lower mid-range thickness there, which the Strat kind of lacks.
Is that because of a double cutaway, or is it just...
Could be.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. A particular kind of single pickup.
Yeah.
You could say the same of a Jaguar.
Okay.
Telly, much beefier pickup.
Yeah. Yeah.
Different construction, metal plate.
That's so interesting.
Metal
Okay,
plate, all of that.
so the tube screamer with that.
Yeah, and you'll know this sound. I mean, so this is a Maxon OD9, which, if you do your tube screamer history reading, you'll
Maxon made the.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Maxon, not that he's called Mr. Maxon, but Maxon designed the tube screamer. It was the original tube screamer.
They made the circuit boards for Ibanez.
Yes.
Yep.
And this is a modern remake, modded by Analog Man. But anyway, it is a tube screamer. It's an 808 mod in a 9 kind of body. You know, it's not the prettiest guitar sound in the world, but my God, it puts a nose on it.
Yeah, right.
Is that what you were doing? You were going, oh.
Yeah, it's that where that thing is.
And it pokes it out of the mix. It
Yeah.
also rolls a little bit of bottom end off, which isn't particularly useful in that setting, but certainly when you go onto the neck pickup.
It's such an awesome sound, and it couldn't be anything else.
No, it couldn't. Apart from some tellies do a really nice Strat neck pickup sound, but yeah. So that push, the tube screamer push there, and lots of people really, really dislike tube screamers for that very reason. But if you're using both of these amps, have got more mid-range push than something like a blackface Fender,
Right.
Which is where that really comes into
Yeah,
its own.
okay.
But even in this environment, now if I do that again and I add more of that.
Okay.
So I'm going to use my side of the D&M drive, which also has a bit of a mid push, and I kick that on top. What should happen is the mids kind of double up, and you'll start to hear that bridge pickup starting to get quite fat.
So good.
And we've got to be a bit careful there, because adding too much of that mid-range starts to make everything sound a bit muddy.
Sure.
So you need to be a bit careful.
So it's the nature of the Strat that allows you to add that much mid-range. I mean, I couldn't imagine doing that with a telly.
I think so, because if you think about like John Mayer, for example, big fan of the 2 and 4 positions, and this guitar, there's something else we'll talk about in a minute, but this guitar doesn't have a reverse polarity middle pickup, so it will sound a bit fatter than a guitar that does. Maybe we'll get one of those out in a sec.
So position 2 and 4 is the in-between positions of the pickups.
So again, when the Strat first came out, and for quite a long time actually, it only had a 3-position pickup selector.
Switch. Yep.
And then they discovered that if you jammed it in between, you could get both pickups. And of course, that both pickups sound, whether it's these 2 pickups or those 2 pickups,
Right.
is a real,
Classic.
It is Strat.
Yeah, right.
And John Mayer, for one, loves it. In fact, I'll do it on this guitar, then I'll grab another guitar. But so I'll go from the middle position to the position 2, as I call it, which is bridge and middle, and some people call it position 4, but it's position 2. Again, these amps have got fairly decent mid-range component in it, but if we add a bit of tube screamer to that, it's almost counterintuitive. You're scooping the mid-range away,
And then adding it back
and
in.
then adding it back. And whether you use a clon or a tube screamer, that is the number one way of adding fatness back into those 2 and 4 positions. So number one, add mid-range. Number two, as the gain goes up, obviously the bridge pickup on a Strat, a lot of people just assume won't keep up with a humbucker or another. So we'll just put a bit of a gainier sound on with Dan's side of the D&M drive. Fizzy, isn't it?
Yep.
Which is no slight on the D&M drive. It just is quite fizzy because it's a single coil bridge pickup.
Mm-hmm.
One of the ways in which vintage Strats differ from modern Strats is they pretty much always came without this pickup. It's almost counterintuitive. These two pickups are connected to tone controls,
Right.
but this one wasn't. And you'd think, which is the pickup you need the tone control on? It's that one. But of course, we're coming from an era of cranked, tweed amps, really,
Right.
which were dark.
So you needed that to cut through.
Yeah, you needed your. But of course, as amp technology's gone on and they became more powerful and less overdrivey, this is just spiky. So
Yeah.
The classic mod that a lot of people do to their vintage style Strats is attach the bridge pickup to a tone pot. It's a really simple mod. Maybe I'll put some diagrams up on screen.
So if that tone pot is doing that one, then this tone pot will do those two. Is that right?
It depends how you wire it. Yeah, there's 4 lugs on the.
Okay, so you can connect it.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and
Okay.
the one lug is your master lug, and your other 3 lugs are the different pickups. So if you bridge to what you just said happens, but if you only connect it to that lug, actually it's that one, it's the furthest one away. I'll put a diagram up. And that can do it, but it only gets you so far, and it all depends on what value
The cap is.
the capacitor is on the control itself, because how much high it rolls off, and this is a real super vintage spec one, so what you'll hear is it will go not much, not much, not much, not much mud.
Right.
So
It's so cool because I can still hear the pick and
Yeah.
all that. It feels like there's no information loss. I can still hear everything.
yeah.
Just gets rid of that fizz.
So if you've bought your classic series Strat or whatever it is, and it doesn't have the bridge pickup connected to that tone pot, and you go to that bridge pickup and you add a bit of gain, then that's one way you can solve it, because otherwise it's just so fizzy.
How often do you use that?
Well, so this is where it gets interesting, because it really does depend on pickup choice.
Right.
What I find is that on medium gain settings like that, I'll be on that all the time,
Oh,
especially
wow.
if you're like under a singer or something.
Sure. Okay.
And then you can just sit out the way a bit and it gets a bit darker. But what gets really interesting is when you put loads of gain on, and most people, not most people, I don't want to make too many generalizations, a lot of people who play Les Pauls and Tellys sort of assume that Strats don't do high gain very well.
Yeah.
And, there is an argument for that when you look at a modern humbucker or even a really nice Les Paul. However, I'm going to stack quite a lot of gain on, and, well, you'll see what happens.
So
insane amount of gain.
absolutely, and everything's crashing into each other. But the dynamics in the top end of that bridge pickup is actually
remains.
And it's forcing its way through all that.
So that's what that's the learning point that took me a really long time to get my head around.
It's like a built-in treble booster almost. It does the same job.
Kind of, but that's
so interesting.
It's really hard to make a Strat absolutely crap out.
Yeah.
And it always retains dynamic. And so when you get into that, you step on your DS1 or your BD2 and you think, oh man, this guitar's really thin. What you need is a bit more volume and maybe a bit more gain, and to have a look at that.
Yeah, right.
And just let the guitar, don't be afraid to give the guitar a bit more than you would give a Les Paul or a... And then, of course, if you plug your Les Paul in now, probably sound glorious, but it would probably be a bit overwhelming and overpowering and bassy and all of that. Actually, one on EQ, I don't set my amps any different for the Strat than I would set it for a vintage sounding Les Paul or a P90 guitar. It's completely the same.
Right.
So it's not like those sorts of adjustments need to be made at amp level. Maybe a tweak or two on the pedal, but not really. So
can I ask how much does volume have to do with? Because it just sounds so massive. But having, we both talk about dynamics a lot, and hearing the dynamics with a sound that has that much gain on it.
Yeah.
It's like. So how much does volume have to play into that?
Well, for me personally, it's a big deal because those of you who play P90 guitars and guitars with vintage style humbuckers, you'll know how much range there is back from 10. So one thing I've discovered more recently is certainly on P90 guitars and humbucker guitars, but especially P90 guitars, I'm almost never on 10.
Wow.
Because the guitar is alive.
Yeah.
Especially if it's got 50s wiring. Now, with a Strat, you can do that, but there's a couple of crunch points. And one is, if you watch a lot of Strat players, if you watch Stevie Ray or Philip Ace or even Hendrix to some degree, a lot of sort of guitar slinger Strat players, we'll leave Gilmour out of it for a minute, they're hammering the damn guitar.
Right.
And for years and years and years and years, I thought the route to making a Strat sound bigger was to hammer it.
Right.
And some people are really brilliant at that. And I was all right at it for a minute. But actually, I think you can take some of that learning from humbuckers and P90s and let the gear do the work a bit more.
Okay.
So yes, volume is really important.
Yeah.
But when you hit that ceiling and you're kind of...
There's nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then I think up the amp a bit more, lean on your pedals a bit more heavily. And if you've got a bit of discipline, which I struggle with and you struggle with, you can just let the gear do the work a bit more. And I think that's where the dynamic comes from. And I do think that dynamic is what makes any guitar, but especially a Strat, really come to life.
Yeah.
Why don't we give you a Strat, Dan?
Got a Strat?
Yeah, I want you to start on one that's got single coil pickups.
Okay.
Like this one, for example. And we'll do the pickup thing in a minute. But oh, that's lovely. That was in E flat.
Love this guitar.
So another thing I want to talk about in fatness is have a Strat in E flat.
Okay.
Because it is a different world. Listen to this.
So slinky. It's awesome.
Pretty nice. What I want you to do now is stop hitting the guitar so hard
Okay.
and enjoy the volume control a bit.
So use this a bit more.
Yeah, and just don't hit the guitar so hard.
Okay.
Play some Danisms. Oh dear. Oh dear. So what we've done there, we've and now I'll just take the gain stages off. Now do the same thing. The reverb will stay on, but just play some of the similar stuff you were playing. So I just switched on when he started playing for the second time there, he was just straight into the amps with the reverb and delay, and then I switched on an Analog Man bad bulb boost just to give you a bit more top end back, and it's really interesting, isn't it? Because I see so many Strat players hammering into the guitar, and I definitely did that for a long time, and I still do it from time to time, but there is so much to be had
By relaxing a bit.
by relaxing, upping your
Bloody
overall
hell.
gain and volume. And you know, obviously your band members might frown at you a bit if you accidentally hit a big transient, but if you relax a little bit in your playing, let the guitar do a bit more of the work, let the pedals do the work, let the amps do the work, I think that range of dynamic in which you have to play gets so big, it becomes a different instrument. And of course you're in E flat, and if you know anything about Stevie Ray or all the other great players down the years who've tuned below concert pitch, you know, Hendrix, great example, but lots of people tune to E flat, it becomes a different instrument, and it's just another way of making the thing fat if you want it to be fatter.
There's a self-conscious thing of getting over immediately when you turn the amps up.
Yeah.
You know, like when we filmed today doing my board, I was like really conscious of being too loud, you know?
Yeah.
Because I thought, man, because if I lay into it like I'm so prone to do,
Yeah.
it's just going to go everywhere. But playing like that,
Yeah.
where you're relaxing and letting the gear do the work, it's so much easier to flow. There's so much less tension.
I was kind of forced into it a bit when I started playing the 335 a bit more, and certainly the Casino more recently. The Casino especially is so alive,
Right.
that if you approach it like that sort of hammering, and don't get me wrong, there is nothing wrong with that approach. It's just if you're doing it and you find that you're constantly trying to get more and it's not coming, then laying off a bit and just letting the gear do the work a bit more.
That alone worth price of admission.
Is
amazing.
Is a good way to do it.
Really amazing. Wow.
Okay, so look, we've let's finish the weak thing by saying, well, what about a stronger pickup in that bridge position then? Because probably the most popular mod for a Strat, certainly in ye olde days, was to get rid of this weak bit of rubbish.
Put a Seymour Duncan Invader.
Yeah, or a whatever it was. Actually, that's a good
The quarter
shout.
pounder.
Damasio Super Distortion.
There you go.
Or in Eddie Van Halen's case, the neck pickup from an 335. Now, personally, I'm not a fan of it because I like the Strat as is, but if you do find that pickup too spiky, we've got a couple of guitars here that do have
Can you buzz me over?
that do have stronger bridge pickups. So this is hardly an apples for apples comparison. These guitars are very different in terms of, well, the most obvious one, the neckwood. But what we've got here is a Seymour Duncan JB humbucker. And here we've got a Andreas Klopman 60 single coil.
Mm-hmm.
Shall we hear the difference?
Yeah, please.
Let's just do no gain pedal.
Okay.
A little bit fatter in the mids.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't seem massively louder to me.
No. Because, I mean, the dynamics in that thing is ridiculous.
Let's try some boost. Now we're starting to hear the nature of that humbucker a bit more.
Yeah,
with the
okay.
mid-range.
Yep.
Let's add some more mid-range. And at this point, 90% of people on the internet are going, wow, that guitar sounds much better. Because it's fatter in the bass, it's fatter in the lower mids.
Yeah. Okay. But like we did before, when you had all that gain on.
Yeah, I think this is why it was such a popular mod and why so many HSS Strats get sold. Because when you play it in this environment and you A/B it with that single coil pickup, it always sounds better. It sounds fatter. Look, let's stick some more gain on. And if that's the sound you want, if you want a rock, you know, heavy rock guitar sound, then definitely go for that. For me, when you start using fuzz pedals, when you want the clarity of that bridge pickup,
Yeah.
I think we're being invaded. It's one of the many reasons why it's so hard to buy a guitar, isn't it? 'Cause if you heard that in a guitar shop, which guitar are you going to buy?
Yeah, for sure.
That one every day of the week.
Yeah.
But I find that then once I get into a musical context in a band, I can't deal with that.
Because
it's
this
too
will
much.
limit so much quicker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not the sound that my ears are attuned
Yeah,
to.
yeah, sure.
But yeah, that can work. The other one we've got is a P90 in the bridge position.
Oh yes.
This is a guitar made by a friend of ours, Carl Longbottom. It's got slightly unusual construction. There are some other things going on in this guitar, different bodywoods and stuff. However, you're predominantly hearing this P90 bridge pickup. So let's have a go on that. Dan, if you go first with that setting we just had. Definitely introducing some of that mid honk.
Really, sure is.
Really nice, really
Yeah,
nice sound.
lovely.
So it's, you know, if you really can't live with that single, or no, if you just don't like that single coil bridge pickup thing, and you
have options.
Yeah, and it's, you know, I'm telling you what you already know. It's been done for 50 years.
Right.
So yeah, different pickup in the bridge position, or indeed anywhere else on the guitar, and that's why John Suhr sells so many HSS Strats.
Right. Okay.
S-shaped objects. Anderson, you know, line them up. All the boutique S-type builders sell lots and lots of those.
See,
kind of
I
guitars.
had my the Strat that I played for years had Seymour Duncan. There's that classic combination. There's the 59 and the JB.
Yeah.
And it was great, especially the gigs I was doing. It was great, but it lost. So the position 2 gone straight away. And there's something about approaching the higher gain differently with the original bridge pickup, like you did before. It's like, and it sounds.
Yeah, it's a different thing.
It's a different thing. I mean, the humbuckers are really cool, but there's something about the sound. There's a dynamic with the vintage bridge.
Yeah.
Which is just classic. Yeah, unbeatable.
Classic Yngwie, classic Richie Blackmore, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an absolutely stylistic choice. Not saying one is better than the other, but it's a way to make the Strat fatter if some of these other options don't work for you.
Very
right,
cool.
You said bridge, and I think it's going to be interesting to have a conversation about bridge. One of the questions, in fact, you had it on that guitar.
Yes. So, just clip me on for 1 second. If I play a chord and have a bit of a wiggle. So this guitar has the bridge floating. Okay, it can go up and down, but you don't set yours up like that.
No. So the correct setup for a Strat, I've got a couple Strats here set up differently, is with the bridge floating. Okay, for fans of the show, this is Transit Van. This is a 2012 American Vintage 59 Strat. The vibrato system, tremolo system as it's called on the headstock, original synchronized tremolo, it's actually vibrato, floats, right? So it can bend down and up, and if you buy a factory standard Strat with a floating with a vibrato bridge, it will come
set up
like that, and you can go onto the Fender website and you can read the various specs for how much it should be off the guitar.
So
now,
that's part of the spec, is it's supposed to be floating.
Yeah, and that much as well.
No way.
Wow. Yeah, pretty much. I can't say it's bang on Fender spec. And of course, what you get is that lovely springy sound. Let's put some reverb on, shall we, Dan? action's gone a mile up because I haven't put the action down and the bridge has gone up. And that's how they come. And it's the sound of the Strat. I had a bit of boost on there. If we take the boost off and just... And, you know, it's the sound of the Strat. However, it creates a couple of problems.
Right.
One is if you don't have it set up very well, or you're new to Strats, and when you get your Strat, you get it out of the box, you do the wang, and the thing goes horrifically out of tune.
Mm-hmm.
This is a whole other video.
Okay.
But the way to set the Strat trem up is make sure every single point of contact is friction free and the strings are wound on tightly and you tune up to the note. Secondly, the way you set the bridge screws is crucial. So the two on the outside need to be pretty much all the way in, but not too tight. And the middle four need to be undone a half turn.
Okay.
So if you have a look at that, you can see that. And again, I'll do it.
Oh, wow.
I'll do a...
That's cool.
I'll do a...
So the outside two are doing the heavy lifting.
They're doing the... Yeah, they're keeping the bridge on the body and doing the predominance of the fulcrum move. And that's significant because a great many modern Strats come with a 2-point vibrato.
Yeah.
And I would almost argue that if you're going to have your trem set up to float and you're not slavishly chasing a truly vintage sound, I would say the 2-point is a much better choice because it's way more efficient and it doesn't require the same sort of fettling that the 6-screw one needs in order to keep it in tune. You know, these poor guys have watched me change the strings on this afternoon, set it up to float, just spent 5 minutes trying to get it in tune. Once it's there, you know, and you've lived with it for a minute, it'll stay there. But it's not too bad. I mean... Proof positive that it's totally possible if you lubricate your nut. If you lubricate your nut slots and do all of that, set it up properly, it can absolutely stay in tune and sound great.
Yeah.
So that leads us on to a couple of other questions.
Mm-hmm.
How many springs?
Yeah. Springs.
I always think when it's floating, 3 or 4.
Okay.
And 3 preferably.
Right. Set up like that, like a claw.
I've done that because I didn't want to screw the screws any further into the guitar. I'd already screwed them in quite a long way.
Okay, so there's a bit more tension there from the outside too.
And clearly you could put 4 screws in and just pull the screws out a bit. It's a very, you know, it's a genius bit of design, but it's also pretty crude. You know, you got springs being held in by screws, and it counteracts the tension of the strings. Simple as that. And I think if you're going to have it floating, 3 springs is quite a nice place to be if you use like normal gauge 10 strings, for example.
Right.
Or indeed 9s. Once you get up to 11s, you might find that in order to counteract that tension of the strings, that 4 springs might be the right thing.
Okay.
But it's totally possible. Now, for me, this causes 2 problems. One is...
So as you bend that note, everything else goes flat.
So you bend a string, it pulls the fulcrum down. So if you want to do something like this...
Just hear it just ducking under.
It's not too bad.
No.
You know, you can... and if you do string on string bends... you can certainly modify your technique to deal with it. But if you come from a Telly or a Les Paul or a 335 where you're not used to fighting against the springs, it's really weird. Similarly, if we stack on a load of Naughty. I'm having to work crazy hard to bend those strings
because you're fighting against those springs,
and I'm having to pull them, bend them further than I normally would. Because look,
yeah, right.
See,
so that's that? So the added tension that you're putting on the springs are compensating for that. That's amazing.
You're bending against that.
Yeah.
We're still in tune.
Yeah,
it's pretty good. So it is proof positive that these 6-point vibratos absolutely can work. So that's issue number one. Issue number two is this is contentious. I think the classic springy Strat sound is with slightly lighter strings and the bridge floating.
Sure.
The pickups in this guitar and the blue one that I'll pick up next aren't that different. They're a little bit different, but they're not.
They're pretty.
They're not worlds apart.
Yeah.
It might be that the blue one has a tiny bit more mid-range, but so what you get here is nice springy. Lots of nice springy, great for that. And if you want to use the wang bar,
wang away.
That's the way to do it. That's the
wang
way to
off.
Do it. But I think if you like Strats, not so springy, a bit more sledgehammer like, and in my opinion, and it's not just me, goodness me, I think you'll find John Mayer agreeing. I think you'll find lots of Strat players down the years agreeing.
He's very agreeable.
That number of springs.
Oh my goodness. Completely decked.
Well, here's the next thing, you see. It looks like it's decked.
Yeah.
And we'll discuss that in a minute. It's actually, I have this with just enough tension to keep that on the body for a big bend, because it's in my opinion that they sound bigger, fatter, thicker, fuller if that is on
resting
the body.
On the body.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you might not want that. You might want the springy sound.
Yeah.
And if you want the springy sound, get it floating. But for me, the sledgehammer Strat sound on the body.
Right.
And that then has two positive knock-ons. One is when I do my string-on-string bends. You can already hear the sound isn't as springy.
It's thicker.
It's thicker. Now, for sure, these pickups might make a difference. But
okay.
But I can tell you that the fundamental, I've done this on many, many Strats, and I can tell you that it's the bridge that has an effect. 5 springs has a tonal effect.
Wow.
And what the springs are made out of has a tonal effect.
Yeah, right.
You think, that's a reverb chamber.
Yeah, of course.
You can probably hear it. Turn the reverb off in the amps a minute.
Yeah.
Just put some love on. you know, again, I think these pickups have a little bit more mid-range, but that's doing some of that.
Yeah, of course.
And the springs definitely have a sound. So that's one thing it solves, is being able to do the string, being able to bend strings. And you might not do string on string bends, but it will save you that having to really bend against the springs all the time.
If you break a string.
Oh yeah, God.
Yeah.
If you break a string, this probably would, because there is a tiny bit of movement in it. But if you've got it properly decked, the rest of the guitar won't go out of tune.
Yeah.
But if you break a string on a floating bridge, then you're in trouble.
There's this amazing video of Guthrie playing with Hans Zimmer, and is in the middle of a solo, breaks a string, whole guitar goes out of tune. So he grabs a slide, and you hardly notice it. He hardly misses a beat and plays the rest of the solo with the slide.
With a slide. Unbelievable. I've seen him get to the end of a song and, you know, absolutely amazing guitar playing all the way through. This is Guthrie Govan, if you're not familiar. And then you'll hear the song will end and he'll sort of play an E chord.
And the whole thing's out of tune.
It's like so far out of tune.
And he's been pitching it.
Yeah.
Oh, far out, man.
There are devices you can get. In fact, Guthrie is a good example. That's what made me think about it. He used to use, or maybe still uses, something called a tremolo.
Oh, okay.
Which is a little device that sits in place of one of these springs, and you can just lock it off.
Oh, wow.
And it's like a sliding thing, and you can just twist the knob, and it locks it.
Wow.
So it physically can't move. So there are devices like that out there if you want to employ that kind of thing. So benefit number one, you can do your string on string bends. You know, you might bend against open strings, I don't know, or you might not do any of that, but you might not want to fight against that springs of the trem all the time.
Yeah.
So the next question is, well then, hang on a minute, I would like both of those things. I want to be able to use the trem bit, but I would prefer either the tonal difference of having the flat on the body, or I want my string bends to be better.
Yep.
That's how I have mine set. So I haven't checked it in the last couple of weeks, but what I try and I have enough tension on those 5 springs so that when I do my biggest bend, everything else is the same in terms of the screws and all that.
Yeah.
When I do my biggest bend, it just lifts off the body.
Okay.
Which I'm not going to do. These are new strings. We'll do that at the end. But I can still use the bar a bit.
Oh, okay.
So I'll just stick that. I'll just stick that little boost on again that we had there. Not the Tube Screamer, but the Bad Bob for a bit of sparkly. Pretty sure it'll be out of tune now because they're new.
There's a lot of
new strings and there was a lot of wanging, but I'll get to the end of the song with that.
Yeah.
But with another hour or so's playing on it and the strings bedded in a bit, that would be more in tune than it is. So that is how I set the bridge.
Sure.
And there have been many players down the years who go one step further. Clapton, I think. I don't know if he was the first to do it, but he's famous for doing it. You put a little block of wood in there.
Oh, and just jam it down.
Just block it flat. It can't move.
Okay.
That all the things I just spoke about makes it even more so.
Sure.
So your string on string bends start to feel more like a telly at this point.
Okay.
In terms of string tension, because you're still, you know, even with plenty of tension on the springs, you're still pulling against it a bit.
Sure.
But it will start to feel more like a fixed bridge guitar if you actually block it. And I get, you know, it must have some effect on the tone, and you put a bit of wood in between there and the guitar's body. Stands to reason, to me at least, that there's some resonance relationship happening there, maybe.
Totally. Okay, what about the saddles? Is there, I mean, are they, you know, as far as tonal variation and stuff, are there saddles that you prefer that help?
I think there's a good point to be made here. Every single part of this guitar, I mean, bear in mind with the maple neck, it came out in 1954.
Yeah, right.
Call up 1954 on Wikipedia or whatever it is you want to, and just have a look what was happening in 1954. Look at the cars, look at the technology, look at the computers they didn't have, look at the mobile phones they didn't have, look at the internet that didn't exist. You know, 1954 is almost unimaginable by today's standards.
Yeah.
And yet this, which actually looks a bit more like that, made its debut. So that every single thing on this guitar has been improved.
Okay.
Tuning pegs.
Yeah.
2-point vibrato instead of
the 6-point.
the 6-point. More powerful pickups. Noiseless. We'll come on to that in a minute. Pots, switches. Even the most ergonomic guitar in the world, they've even made it more ergonomic by making this shaved off. So every single thing about this guitar has been improved. And saddles, there are many different types of saddle you can get. So tiny history. They were bent steel saddles at first, and then, like all guitar companies or big guitar companies, when Fender was trying to save money in the 70s, they swapped those out for cast ones, which were soft metal.
Yeah. And wasn't there a reaction between the strings and the cast metals, and they'd rust? And
I don't know if it's that or just the fact that the metal was pretty soft, so the strings, that break angle, dug right into them. I was talking to Ainsley Lister just recently. He's got a 74 Strat, which has got the cast saddles. He took them off, he put some of these on. Much prefer the sound of the cast ones.
Really?
So there's no... Now, for me, these things, I've been through saddles. I've been Graphtec saddles. Ones made out of different hardnesses of steel, titanium. Been through them all. And I just come back to the most vintage possible ones I can find. Because the point of that whole tangent about everything on this guitar has been improved, that means it's necessarily changed.
Sure.
And that change is either to your taste or it's less to your taste.
Yeah, okay.
And personally speaking, it's less to my taste.
Okay.
I
That's
don't think
fascinating.
For the sound I want to hear, I don't think you can beat these bent steel saddles.
Yeah.
And for functionality, weight, tone, I don't think you can beat these old slot head tuners.
Cloisons.
Yeah, but you know, you might be a locking tuner devotee, and that's all good. If you find them more useful, then nothing wrong with it. So
Sure.
So yeah, the one really annoying part about the old arm is that it screws in.
Right.
And what happens is it over time it wears.
Sure.
So you'll get a knock where the threads of the wear against the internal thread. The fix for that, if you can find it, the guitar probably came with one, but you've since lost it. As long as there's no hole in the bottom of that block there, a tiny little compression screw, about that big.
Did they come with them originally?
Usually.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know about originally, but certainly modern Fenders come with them. One would assume they do, and that sits in the bottom of there, and it's a super high tension, tiny little screw. They're usually black in colour, and it just pushes
against the thread,
the bottom of the arm, and stops it from wobbling quite so badly. Modern manufacturers like Callahan and others have created a much better approach to that. But anyway, if your thing is wobbling a bit, you can find one of those compression screws and put it down in there. If you have got a hole in the bottom of your block and it would just fall out the bottom, you can do things like wrap plumber's tape around the threads.
Right. Okay.
Been through all of that down the years. Yeah, and there are many companies out there who've come out with new versions of this bridge that address all of those problems. But as I said earlier, you know, every improvement is a change.
Sure.
And it's whether you want that change or not.
Let's talk about pickups. We touched on, you know, you can have humbuckers at the bridge and stuff. One thing I want to talk to you about is those positions 2 and 4, which is such a massive part of the Strat thing. Now, the Strat that I had originally, it was hum cancelling in 2 and 4, but it didn't come like that originally, right?
Yeah. So what we're talking about here is noise, really. Big problem with single coil pickups.
If I did the same thing with the humbucker in this. Yeah.
Yeah. You've only got to go onto Wikipedia or something and read what a humbucking pickup is if you want to understand why that happens. But
it's not just a clever name.
No. So noise obviously is a problem. And originally Strats came with all of these 3 pickups with the same winding direction and the same polarity for the magnets. What somebody realised, and I don't know the history of this, somebody will helpfully add it to the comments. They realised that if you made this middle pickup something called RWRP, reverse wound reverse polarity, it becomes hum cancelling in positions 2 and 4. I will demonstrate that. Still almost in tune down. Actually, the other thing I didn't mention about the old wang bar, the other reason I can't play the 2 pivot thing is, one,
That's very good.
I often rest my hand on there.
Good.
Secondly, it doesn't happen on these 6-screw bridges, but it definitely happens on the 2 pivot ones. When you hit the guitar, it warbles like Steve Vai.
Right.
I'm not sure I'll be able to get this one to do it, but I'll try. Another benefit of the 6 pivot bridge over the 2 pivot one, they don't warble. Some players, if you listen to Ariel Posen play when he plays his Sir, he uses that effect.
Oh, wow.
That warble effect. And you hear Vi do it as well. I mean, he might do it with
yeah,
the bar.
He does the flicky thing.
Yeah, it's a similar effect to when you flick the bar on a Floyd,
okay.
but it happens on a 2 pivot Strat bridge if you hit the guitar too hard. So just 2 more little things there that mean that I can't use that.
Yeah.
But we were talking about positions 2 and 4. So
yeah.
because in a humbucking pickup, the 2 coils are, one of them's reverse wound, reverse polarity, and that's exactly what's happening here.
Yeah.
So you buck the hum.
Yes.
And that is a great benefit. I use that on the show a lot. All of my guitars to date have had RWRP until I got the 61, which unfortunately is not here today. It was a guitar that I had on loan for a long time, an original 61, and that guitar did not have RWRP. And over a bunch of conversations down the years, try not to go too much into this because it's already a long video, but it is believed that they sound quite different, RWRP and non-RWRP.
Yeah.
Johnny Marr did loads of research on his Jag when he was doing the signature guitar with Fender to try and get the right pickups. Worked with his tech, Bill Puplett, and Tim Mills at Bare Knuckle Pickups, and they discovered they much preferred the sound of the 2 guitars, the same wind and polarity.
So
2 pickups.
Yeah. Right.
And when they tried RWRP for the hum cancelling, they just didn't like the sound of it so much. And the conversation goes that maybe it does affect the resonance of the strings. Don't know about that.
Okay.
Anyway, so here's a guitar with RWRP, and my personal belief is that it hollows out the mids
Sure.
a little bit more.
Yep.
So, yeah, I don't know. Let's see if we're still in tune.
What a great sound. So these pickups are different. They don't have that WRP.
These
It's
ones are not
vintage
RWRP.
spec. Okay.
Tell you what's really interesting. I mean, I know they're two different guitars, but they're both American vintage Strats with slab rosewood fingerboards, older bodies, maple necks. Everything else is the same. This one resonates very differently to that one. And I don't know how much of it is down to that bridge being on the body.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll just do that same thing. It's almost an extension of what we were talking about before. That guitar sounds much springier, much lighter, much thinner. So how much of that is down to RWRP? I don't know. This guitar clearly has quite a bit more lower mid.
Totally, but there's a hollowness in the positions 2 and 4.
Yeah.
This doesn't do.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
It definitely doesn't scoop it out as much, does it?
No, nowhere near it. It sounds spectacular.
It's still... Well, Dan's been listening to this guitar for 6 years now, so they are new pickups today, in fact.
Killer.
It does. Nice lot of sparkle on top there as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, whether... I don't know if it would be a buying choice for you when you buy a guitar, because to be frank, most modern Strats come with RWRP.
Right. But that's just a matter of changing that middle pickup.
It is.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to living with this for a while, just
I
to
think it sounds unreal.
see, just to see. Because again, and I'll say again, the thing that really made me go, hang on a minute, is it another one of those things in that vintage tonal soup? Like when we started listening to that 61 Strat, and we heard, I was lucky enough to have it for 18 months. And
Well, really? Was it 18 months?
yeah, pretty much.
Wow.
So we got a really good listen to that guitar, and we heard it back to back with all these other Strats, week in, week out. And we came to the conclusion that it sounded better than all of them.
Astonishing guitar.
And of course, it's it's made in 1961. It's a 60-year-old guitar.
Yeah.
But all of these little things, is RWRP a factor in why a 60-year-old guitar sounds so good? Maybe.
Yeah, totally.
Maybe it's part of the soup.
So interesting.
So it's something to think about. I don't know what the advice there is, other than, to me anyway, the RWRP sounds slightly hollower, slightly more scoopy.
Yep.
And if you want the John Mayer sound, it almost seems like a must.
Sure. Yeah. Okay, so can we just touch on the neck pickup, because that's one of the, that if I think of Stevie Ray, I think of that neck pickup sound that he had.
Yeah.
What's going on there?
I don't know. It just seems that there is something about this neck position in a Stratocaster, especially if you add a bit of glass on there, that just has this woody, fluty, you know, for those of you who play Les Pauls, well, any humbucking guitar with it can get real muddy real quick there. But with a Strat, yes, it can get muddy, but the clarity, and for me, there's a couple of things on the neck pickup that I love. One is that SRV type thing.
Yeah.
I guess if we're going to go for that, I should play the Maya Strat and see if we can do the E flat thing.
Okay.
And we'll put some glass on. Yeah, in fact, let's do that first. So, you know, for those of you who like that kind of SRV thing, and certainly I do, this doesn't sound like SRV, but E flat is essential. It's absolutely essential for that sound. And then neck pickup, there's just something about it. And what we'll do is we'll add a bit of tube screamer, and then I'm gonna add some glass onto the top of the tube screamer.
Okay.
Let's see where we get to. I'm gonna get some reverb going in the 2-rock.
Unreal.
So you hear how much clarity it still has.
Unreal, yeah.
Now let's add some glass on top of that and a little bit again with the bad bob. What I've done there, I'm going to come forward a bit,
Unreal.
go towards the In Step album where he added a bit more gain and like maybe 2 tube screamers. I don't know what he was using for it, but if we wind some gain on the D&M drive there, you'll get a bit more of that. I can hear
That's the sound, man. That's amazing.
I can hear the bad bob giving it a bit too much glass up top. Yeah, and you just won't get that out of a neck position humbucker.
No.
It's that Strat, E flat. And just to prove that, if I move on to the regular tune guitar a minute. Sorry. I mean, I suspect it'll still sound cool, but there's just something about E flat that... might be a bit too,
First of all,
too much gain.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Just awesome. You was mentioning before that he has a lot more treble than people think on his
Yeah,
sound.
that's why I kicked that bad bob on the end.
Yeah, to give that bit of
Just
clarity.
a bit of bite,
yeah.
because the tube screamer alone quite often,
can rob a bit of that.
yeah, depends on your tube screamer, but a bit of top end loss. But yeah, and then maybe a little bit too much gain there. You know, lest we forget, you know, may he rest in peace, Stevie Ray, Dumble Steel String singer, Marshall Major, cranked vibe reverbs. You know, that sound. I was talking to Doyle Bramall once, and he told me that he played a gig with Stevie once, and Stevie was taking a solo or something, playing as Doyle walks onto the stage, and he said Stevie Ray played and he literally fell to his knees. It made his knees buckle. So clearly the whole rest of it is part of that. But that E flat, you know, bit of mid-range, neck pickup. And then, you know, it doesn't have to be Stevie Ray. I think if we do the neck pickup thing, I'll add a bit of delay and reverb. We'll go for exactly the same sound, just not with the D&M drive for a second. apologies for the wig out.
Oh, stop it.
But I think
unbelievable.
that's my case for Strats. The dynamic range
Far out.
is colossal when... See, if you did all that with a Les Paul, it would sound amazing. It would sound really great and everything. But the top of it would be too much.
Sure.
Be kind of uncontrollable. But with the Strat, you can pile it all on. You can pile the volume on. You can
bring it back, and it's got the clean. And
yeah. I've got a bit of work to do here. There's still a bit of cleanup issue going on. And I did turn the octave on at the end there. The other thing about the Strat net pickup with the volume and the tone rolled back a bit. That's the classic octave sound. Didn't sound very classic there. I think the Tweedy was doing something weird to it, but
that was amazing.
I just need to satisfy my own curiosity. Minute down.
Yeah, very good.
Much happiness.
Oh man, I have learnt so much today.
Clearly there's so much more we could talk about. General setup, all that. I don't want to get into it now. Fingerboard radius, just to say that all my Strats are 7.25.
Right, which is the vintage
the
one.
curvy fingerboard radius that you can't bend strings on, Dan. Can't bend strings on a vintage radius board.
Unreal.
Yes, you can.
Unreal.
I mean, to be fair, the action's not low, but
Yeah.
it's not a barrier, a vintage radius board.
Sure.
So there's that. We could go on. Didn't even talk about middle pickup.
Middle pickup. Man, okay.
Sorry, it's been really long. I'm enthused by Strats. And I could talk about them for weeks.
I'm so glad we did this because I genuinely, I learned so much. So much of that stuff you said, I had no idea. It's when you spend so much time with an instrument, like I can go through telly stuff,
Yeah.
you know, and talk about sort of saddle metal material and just the difference the actual plate makes, you know, and all that stuff. But you know, you pick up that stuff when you're specifically playing one guitar for a long, long time.
Yeah.
There's those little and yeah.
It's almost like a knackered old car or
Yeah, right.
an old pair of trainers. You know, you can do so much better. You can use noiseless pickups. You can have more comfortable neck profiles. There's so many things you can do, and I'm sure this video will be full of comments going, have you tried, have you tried, have you tried? The answer is yes, I have.
Yeah.
Now, I got my first proper Strat when I was 14 years old.
Wow.
So, you know, it's been that long playing Strats. I'm now 47. So however long that is, 33 years. And yeah, I've really tried it all. And which is not to say it's better or worse or any of that. It's my personal preference.
Sure.
Is for that original guitar that I will own one day because
I'll just say, knowing you for as long as I've known you and the amount of detail that you will go into to explore these things, I mean, it is incredible. So if you've ended up here after this journey, it's like, okay, that's good enough for me, you know.
Yeah, but it's, you know, I equally know lots of people who just can't live with a 6-point bridge.
Yeah,
I know loads of people who just cannot get a sound out of that bridge pickup, and this is all completely valid and really underlines that whole TPS message of, you know, there are no answers, only better questions, and understanding what this does or that doesn't do to enable you to make a choice that's going to work for you. And that's what it's about.
Thank you. You played so beautifully today.
Oh, thank you,
it's
mate.
so lovely to hear you.
It was indulgent. And I enjoyed
it was just wonderful, wonderful. Brilliant. Thank you so much for watching. If you've made it to the end, you're an absolute legend.
Oh, quick, did I just talk about impedances?
a massive thank you to our preferred retailers in the UK and in Europe is...
No treble bleeds, 250k pots,
No treble bleed.
no treble
Oh.
bleed.
We could just keep going.
Yeah.
Okay.
250k pots, but preferably heading towards 270, 280 on the tone pots.
Wow. Okay.
Is Anderson's Music of Guildford and Surrey, where you can buy lots of Strats.
And tone pots.
Yeah.
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 Also, our friends in Australia.
Pedal Empire of Brisbane, Queensland, where you can also buy Strats and lots of other nice things.
A massive thank you to our patrons on Patreon. Thank you guys for helping us out there. Really appreciate it.
Thank you dearly.
And also, a massive thank you to everyone that's gone to thatpedalshowstore.com
Yeah.
and grabbed t-shirts. We're twinning today. That was a...
Yeah, a happy mistake. We've
Yep.
got a bunch of new stuff coming, so keep your eye on that Pedal Show store.
Yep.
We haven't mentioned Sweetwater in the States. Links below. I wish I could have a percentage of every Strat that gets sold over the next 2 years from Sweetwater.
Brilliant.
And then I could afford to buy my old Strat then.
Yeah.
But one day.
One day.
But
one
this,
day.
this,
Oh man, sounding unbelievable.
yeah. Did I say true vintage springs? They need to be
No,
made out of the
true
right
vintage
stuff.
springs. Okay.
Yeah. This. Look at that bridge.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Is that new?
Well, yes.
Wow.
It needs to sit slightly off centre. Did you know that this never sits right in the middle?
No. Yeah. So
Yeah. Patent numbers? You want a lesson on those?
later. Let's have a cup of tea. Thanks everyone.
Pick guard bevel. That's really, really important. The font of the numbers.
Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Have a fantastic day. We'll see you soon.
Okay.
Thanks everyone.
Bye.
Bye.